Hello friends, I'm here to share with you a journey. A journey that began some time back for me, and it has been going on ever since then. I am a second generation social activist. It all began earlier for me, and what I remember though is that my real experiences and learning began when I started participating in youth camps. In the youth camps, in a large group, we managed to share various learning processes as well as sharing processes that we were supposed to be going through at that age. And we learned a lot about the social issues facing rural India at that time. During that process, we felt that it would be important for us to challenge ourselves and do something that we felt our hearts were telling us to do. And so we decided to explore living in a village. And we had 3 questions for that. We were wondering whether we could actually live in a village because I was not born and brought up in a village. We also did not know what we would do in a village, so we also needed to find that out. And the third thing we needed to know was where exactly would we live? We didn't know that either. And I guess I'm slow enough that I took at least 3 years to answer all of these questions. And the first question we answered by living in a small village by the banks of Narmada River for 2 years and participating in the work of a small organization, doing all sorts of things like developing alternative energy things, doing small developmental activities, working with children and so on and so forth. But those 2 years also threw up many more questions at us. Questions like, if it's a mixed community village, which community should we work with? Or should we work with all communities? Should we live inside a village or in the campus of the organization? And things like that. So we had even more questions then. And so we decided to answer those by meeting other people doing similar work all over the country. So I and my partner, we traveled across India for 4 months, covering 15,000 kilometers, meeting 33 groups and individuals and organizations, and talking to them about how they approach these issues, how they approach these questions. And we were very lucky that all of them shared their experiences with us very frankly, very openly, without holding back. And that helped us a lot. This is the route we took during our motorcycle trip. It was a trip across the country for 4 months and 15,000 kilometers. The lessons we learned out of this trip were various. For example, one of the things we learned was, don't preach, but try to live whatever you believe in and let the people learn from that. The other thing we also learned was that try to live within the community rather than within an institution or in an urban area away from the community. We also learned that people who wanted any activity actually did come up with their own activity. So don't start with programs. Start with talking to the people, and programs will come on their own. And stuff like that. Again, as I said, this was a process carried out with a small community, a core group of community that became a lifelong community for me. And all this brought us to Mozda. Mozda is a tiny village in the Satpura Mountains, in the tail end of the Satpura Mountains in Gujarat. And this is where we started living in 1990. And it's about 600 people. It's inhabited by the Bhil Vasawas. And I don't know if many of you know this, but Adivasis have an innate understanding of the nature surrounding them, and they also have a very clear connection to the forest, to the nature surrounding them, and they live in consonance with the surrounding forces, and therefore they know how to sustain the forest, how to sustain the surroundings, and so on and so forth. And as we started living there, we learned how they did all that. For example, a 14-year-old girl, Sumitra, one day took us to the forest and she showed us how to harvest roots and tubers from the forest to eat, but at the same time, how not to let the vine that grew these tubers and roots die, and thus sustaining even in spite of harvesting. And we saw during those years that even children would know how to be responsible with the forest. For the first 2 years, we did not do any activity because we felt that we should learn about the culture, we should learn about the lifestyle there. And so we did not do any work except playing with children, working with them on their farms, and participating in their cultural activities. And the children taught us the language there, which was different than what we knew. And because of that, a new world opened to us. And then what we saw was that we could even talk to elders, we could talk to children, we could talk to women. And this brought many more approaches to our life too. And out of that came various activities, which we had no original plan to start with. But we also learned other things. For example, we learned very interesting traditional farming techniques and traditional irrigation techniques that allowed them to produce food for themselves, but not for the market. And that in that lies a sustainability as well. We also learned various cultural aspects. We learned that for them, everything surrounding them is a living entity. It's part of their life, and so it's a living entity. And so, for example, what you see here is a field, is a chickpea field, chana field. And the chana field also, you see two lines across. While the planted chickpea are like that, but there's a cross across. And the cross represents the soul of the field. The field itself is a living being because it nurtures them. And this is something that an understanding they have developed. Similarly, a house also has a soul because it gives you shelter. And the pointer is not visible, but you will see a different kind of weave up there. The whole weave is a different cloth type weave, but there's a break in that weave, and that break in the weave represents the soul of the house. And similarly for everything, even for stones, they have these markers that represent the life that surrounds them and sustains them. This is such a depth of understanding and such a variety of understanding that we had not understood before that. And this brought us to the fact that this culture, while the outside world believed came out of illiterate people and so on, was actually a very intricately developed culture. And it understood a lot more than we did. And we have a lot of experiences about that to share as well. For example, there was a time when I had to go for a meeting to a village about 13 kilometers away from my home, and I had to take a night walk. I was being guided by two men because I did not know the way. But impromptu, a boy of 9 joined us. And we were walking, it was pitch dark, and we were walking through bear and leopard territory. And we didn't know what was going to come. And I was afraid at that time as well. And so I heard a rustle, and I turned around and I asked what it was. And the boy nonchalantly said, "Oh, that was a deer." After a time, I see some diggings in the ground, and I say, "What that is?" And he says, "Oh, people have been searching for crabs, and this is where they found the crabs." Later on, I heard another rustle, and without me asking, he says, "That was a rabbit." And it's pitch dark, it's mind-boggling, and I say, "How do you know? How do you know how to differentiate between a rabbit and a deer and this and that?" And he looks at me and says, "Each walks so differently that you hear the difference." I couldn't hear the difference. But a boy of 9 knows this much, knows so much, that he can recognize that difference. And he knows where crabs were found in pitch dark. That is a kind of understanding to reckon with. I don't know how much understanding we developed at that age, but people who live that close to nature and people who have such innate understanding of their own surroundings do. And that's something we learned. We walked to that village, which was very isolated because there is no road leading to that village. There are only paths, footpaths leading. We were hosted by Dhanu and Tarsing. And we were hosted by them, and I asked Dhanu, the lady of the house, so what do you think? Is it difficult to live here in a place which you have no access to market, you have no electricity, you have no water supply, you have no health services available? Do you find it difficult to live here then? And she says, no, not really, because I don't need any of those things. But I wish I had a school in this village, because my children have to walk 6 kilometers to get to school. And in monsoon, that means crossing 7 rivers. And so they cannot go to school in monsoon. So can we have a school in this village? That's what she asked. And that's something we have consistently seen over all these years. When we urbanites talk of development, we always think of economic development. We always think of raising the standards of living, as we call it. But that's not their understanding of development. And we are such arrogant people that we don't even know that we should ask them what kind of development they seek and what kind of development they want. And what stage of life do they want when they think they are developed. But we don't know how to ask that. We don't, and I don't know if we care to ask that. And that has also brought us to the conclusion that the planners and the people who live in this world that manages the society, that governs the society, do not really care about these communities, do not really care about these lifestyles, do not really care about this knowledge, language, or understanding. We can change or destroy these communities with a stroke of pen. We can design a dam to submerge these whole regions, this whole ecology which nurtured such understanding, which nurtured such lifestyles, and which nurtured such way of living. We don't care about that. For us, expressways, dams, mines, large factories are much more important because we believe that brings economic development, and that's the most important development. And in spite of that, we think we are the people who can develop. And in spite of that, we think that that is how development can be brought into this world. And after that, when we have been through all these experiences and all these processes, I still do not understand how this change, that change we seek in this world, that change we are trying to think for this world that we would like to bring, how that can be brought. We have our ideas, we have our beliefs, and that's why we work the way we work. However, it's very obvious that the world is at odds with that. And even at a personal level, we need to bring those changes at the personal level as well as the societal level. And that is something that all of us, especially the young people, need to explore, understand, and follow. That the change we want to bring, are we ready to work for that change? Are we ready to work for a society that we believe should exist 10, 20, 30 years down the line? Are we ready to bring those changes within our lifestyle? Right now, we are so busy spreading the urban way of life as a model everywhere, all over the place. I don't know if that is what is the right model, because I think everybody knows by now that that lifestyle is not a sustainable lifestyle and it is not going to work. Everybody does know that if all the population of India and China start living at the level of US or Europe, then we are not going to have enough resources on this planet or 5 more planets to satisfy all the requirements of resources. So what exact model should we preach? And that also brings us back to the personal question. What kind of lifestyle do we want for ourselves? Are we also trying to propagate the urban lifestyle that surrounds us? And I think it's in the hands of the young people to bring the change, because young people are the ones who are capable of that change, and capable of that a new lifestyle, a sustainable lifestyle. Thank you very much.